All right, picture this. It's 1957. You're a young Marine, stationed way out at a US Air Base in Japan, doing pretty boring, routine radar work. Until, well, it stops being routine. You start noticing things. Weird shipments rolling in late at night. Medical personnel who don't really act like doctors. And this one building, man, it's always off limits. Even to guys with your clearance. That Marine? Lee Harvey Oswald. Yeah, that Oswald. And the base? U.S. Naval Air Facility, Atsugi. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. Oh, great. Another JFK conspiracy theory. But hold on a second. Because what was going down at Atsugi has way less to do with Dallas, and a lot more to do with a covert war for control of the human mind. See, researchers like John Newman and Lisa Pease have pointed out that Atsugi wasn't just any base. It was a major CIA-linked U-2 spy plane hub. And Oswald's time there perfectly lines up with the early days of the CIA's super-secret experiments in behavior control. Here's where it really gets wild. Most folks assume MKUltra, the CIA's infamous mind control program, officially kicked off in 1953 when CIA Director Allen Dulles gave it the green light. But the roots, as it turns out, go way, way deeper. Back in April of 1950, that's a full 3 years earlier, the CIA launched something called Project Bluebird. It was later rebranded Artichoke. And its mission? To figure out how to completely break someone's mind using anything from drugs to hypnosis, electroshock, even just total sensory deprivation. So, why Atsugi? Well, according to John Marks's incredible book, The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, early CIA strategists were looking for overseas sites that were 1. Close enough to Korea to gather intelligence, and 2. Far enough from Congress to operate completely in the shadows. Atsugi fit the bill perfectly. This is where Sidney Gottlieb enters the scene. He was this mild-mannered CIA chemist, looked like your average accountant, but seriously, his ideas were straight out of a mad scientist's lab. Declassified memos from that era actually described trials involving what they called chemical amnesia and disinhibitors given to enemy defectors. There's one memo, Artichoke Memorandum Number 2. That's just chilling. It asks point blank, can we get control of an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will? Fast forward into the 1950s. The Philippines becomes this absolute hotspot for American anti-communist ops in Asia. You had US Special Forces out there, supposedly just training local units to fight the Huk Rebellion. But here's the kicker. According to historian Alfred McCoy, in his book A Question of Torture, that training actually involved a whole lot of psychological experimentation. And where did this happen? Two names keep popping up, Clark Air Base and Subic Bay Naval Base. During the congressional hearings of the Church Committee in 1975, there were several redacted testimonies that definitely mentioned Southeast Asian sites being used for behavioral conditioning. A former Air Force medic, pseudonymously referred to as David L., actually described giving experimental compounds to Filipino trainees during mock capture exercises. One Filipino participant, known only as Ramon V., claimed he was given these white pills before interrogation drills. His exact words were, "I couldn't feel my face or time. I woke up in the base infirmary. 2 guys from my unit didn't come back." And let's be absolutely clear, these weren't enemy prisoners. These were Allied soldiers, people who were trusting their American handlers, only to be experimented on. There's even a Pentagon memo, uncovered in 1977, that hinted Clark Air Base had a psych surveillance unit whose job it was to monitor how trainees reacted to stress chemical variants. By the mid-60s, this whole creepy web of operations had stretched across Asia. And when you get to Vietnam, things just got even darker. Stephen Kinzer, in his book Poisoner in Chief, recounts that Gottlieb himself oversaw MKUltra-linked programs right there in Saigon. The CIA was pulling out all the stops, using diplomatic cover to expand these operations. Groups like the Asia Foundation and USAID, which sound totally benign, right, were actually used as fronts to fund behavioral research in various Asian universities. There's even a 1967 funding document that links a Manila study on obedience and group loyalty directly to a U.S. intelligence grant. In plain English, the CIA was running mind control experiments on partner populations, all under the guise of giving out development aid. Then, 1972 hits. Ferdinand Marcos declares martial law in the Philippines. Civil liberties? Gone. Dissent? Illegal. And the CIA. They now had pretty much open access to a completely compliant regime and an endless supply of political prisoners. A former Marine intelligence officer was quoted in a leaked 1983 memo saying, "Clark was where we screened. Subic was where we broke them." That echoes countless survivor accounts from the Marcos years about these terrifying truth serum interrogations supposedly conducted with foreign advisors. But the web stretched even further. Enter President Sukarno of Indonesia. Here's a guy who, in the 1960s, was walking this impossible tightrope between Washington and Moscow. Indonesia had oil, strategic sea lanes, and 100 million people. And Sukarno was getting a little too cozy with the Soviets for Allen Dulles' taste. The CIA tried a traditional coup in 1958, failed spectacularly. So they went psychological. The CIA actually commissioned the production of pornographic films featuring a Sukarno look-alike, hoping to destroy his reputation. Think about that for a second. This is the same agency that was dosing prisoners with LSD. The kicker? It backfired completely. Indonesians saw the tapes and basically said, "Good for him." Cultural psychology, it turns out, doesn't translate as neatly as Sidney Gottlieb's chemical formulas. But this wasn't just about embarrassing one leader. This was about testing the limits of psychological warfare on an entire nation. Could you destabilize a government not with bullets or bombs, but by manipulating how people think, feel, and react? The Indonesian colonels who eventually overthrew Sukarno in 1965, many had been trained by the CIA at those very same bases we talked about. They learned about crowd psychology, about using fear and confusion to break down social bonds. When the coup finally happened, the bloodbath that followed wasn't just political violence. It was psychological warfare perfected. So what finally put a stop to all this? In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms gave the order: destroy all MKUltra records. According to Church Committee transcripts, Helms explicitly told his aides to burn these documents because they were too sensitive to survive. But here's the thing about burning evidence. Sometimes copies survive, and people remember. Senator Frank Church's hearings in 1975 started pulling at these loose threads. They revealed funding trails, shell organizations, and field reports detailing chemical stress testing abroad. when senators asked CIA officers if American bases overseas had hosted experiments that would be illegal on US soil. They dodged the question hard. One Air Force psychiatrist testified that the infirmary at Clark Air Base treated several non-American patients suffering from acute psychotic breaks. When pressed on whether these were controlled studies or accidents, he replied, "I don't know if they were tests or accidents, but they weren't all Americans." Today, Clark is just a civilian airport. Subic Bay is a duty-free zone. But the research they did, that didn't just vanish. It evolved. The ultimate goal was never just some simple truth serum. It was about controlling behavior, manipulating memory, engineering obedience. Sukarno's Indonesia was the dress rehearsal. The real performance? That's happening right now. The battlefield isn't some remote jungle or hidden base anymore. It's right in your pocket. The human mind is still the final frontier. And trust me, someone's always trying to conquer it.